Okay, um, this will be probably part one of two or maybe three about using for loops. So for some people, this it might just click. I, on the other hand, was not one of those people. I know I really got confused. Um, just what was even being said in for loops. I had a hard time. I guess it wasn't explained to me correctly. I especially had a hard time when I got to nested for loops, which would be kind of part two. So first of all, I think it's good to just explain why we want to use these things. So let's go ahead and just fire off our little sketch that I've set up here. Put this up in the window. Okay, so I just said let's put a line in 100 from the side. My canvas is 600 by 600, so in 100, so that's 100, and I subtracted 100, so it's at 500, and 300 is halfway through here. So what if I wanted a bunch of lines? Well, and let's space them like 10 units apart or something like that. I've got my work cut out for me, so let's go ahead and say copy and paste that one in there. Okay, so this would be 0, and that'll be 0, and let's paste that again, and that'll be 10, 10. I know, do you think I'm going to go the whole way? I'm tempted. I'm tempted to make a whole tutorial where I just copy and paste all this stuff all the way through here, right? But I'm not. So let's just go ahead and stop that right there and see where. Well, okay. So I have a few lines started here, and this is a great way to start off. When I first started doing code, learning this, still learning. I would do a little bit of this, like, hey, I'm just getting a couple lines in here. I don't want to deal with any of this kind of fancy computer language. But you can see where eventually this is going to become very, very painful. So instead of doing that the whole entire way, let's just go ahead and do this right line once, and let's use a for loop. Okay. So, all right, so how does for loop work? So I'm going to type it out, and then let's explain this. So for is the keyword, and we'll say integer I equals 0. And again, I'm going to come back and explain all this and say, well, yeah, let's do it this way. Nice. Width and I. And this time, normally what we do with the, or sorry, that shouldn't be width. Doesn't matter, but we call it height. And you could do plus plus, or just go through here. In fact, I'm going to do both. Let's do plus plus. All right. So I have I, and let's explain what this does. So first a little bit, let's say, so for loop, what does it mean? So the first thing that's going to happen in here, this first one here is we're going to assign value to variable. Okay. And you'll generally see this as I, it's just kind of a convention, but it can be other things, it can be other names, whatever works for you. But we're going to assign a value or to a variable. This is where we start counting. Okay. And then the next one is the condition. Check the condition. Did I spell that right? Condition. Okay. Condition. Check the condition. See if true. False. Okay. We check the condition. Now, if this is not true, okay, so right now, if I has been assigned to 0, and the next thing I do is I come over here and I take I and I say, well, are you less than the height? Okay, so you made it through this hurdle, so now we'll go to the next one, and that says, and this is the iterator, okay? Counter. Add another step. Okay. So here we would say this is 0. Okay, that's fine. I'll let it be 0. And then I come back over to this and say, is this true? Yes, it's less than height. Well, okay, go ahead and let's add 1 to it. So let's say I plus plus, or so now we have 0 plus 1, we have 1. And then we don't come back here and reassign. This is just the beginning of it. It just, now that we've assigned it, we just stay kind of here. So we say I has already been assigned in this, and it's 1, it's still true. 2, it's still true. 3, it's still true. So we can use this as a counter in several ways. So here, what I'm going to do is just say I, and I'll change this one to I as well. So this is going to be the Y height. Now if I just say I, it's going to go 1 pixel at a time. So as I go through this, it's just going to, in fact, let's just go ahead and do that. Okay, it's just going to give me a solid block because there's no spacing. So it just puts a line at pixel 0, pixel 1, pixel 2. So until it gets to height, it isn't going to stop. So what we want to do is space it, right? So if we want to, let's, this is a good thing to put as a variable. Let's say float space equals, let's say 10. Okay. And now I can just come down here and say times space, and we'll run that. Okay. So it goes through and it says this is 0. Okay, 0 times space is 0. Okay. Then it becomes 1. 1 times space is 10. 2 times space is 20, and it just keeps going through. Now, the one thing here is that this is just going to keep going. It's actually going way off the page because we don't need it to go that far. In fact, if we could find this out, we could use a value like, let's say, oh, let's do it here. I don't want to do it up top here because we haven't done the size. We haven't really called it out. So we could do it once right here. We could say, oops, my bad. Say float amount. I'll just call it amount. And here I'll just say it equals 0. But what I'm going to say is amount equals the height, now that we've set what the height is, divided by the, so that will tell us how many sections we're going to get. So you would have to just print this out. I could say print line to figure out what that is. That's going to give me a number. Let's just go ahead and do that print amount. And I'm going to get an error here probably. Ooh, not that. That was terrible. Sorry, I was distracted by my email. Okay, 60. I hope you can see that on my console. So if I'm going to space it 10 units every little time down, and I divide that, that will tell me how many little steps it's going to take to get to this number. And I could have done a little simple math here with 10 into 60, but if you have a different size, you have an odd number of cell divisions, and I'm doing this, it seems kind of silly doing this example, but I'm going to do this in part 2 of this example, and it will be helpful. So let's just say 60. All right. So I changed this to 60 just because when it gets here at the bottom, I don't want it to go anymore. It gets down here. Actually, it says if it's less than 60. And you can put whatever kind of conditional statements are in here. I could say, if I is less than or equal to 60, then go ahead and do it. But if it gets to be more than that, then it's going to stop. So it's actually going to put another one here at the end. Okay. So you can put whatever little conditional in there. Usually it would be less than, but it could be greater than depending on what you start with the number. Main thing here is that we're going to use this as a multiplier to space things out. Is the way we're going to do this. We could also, if we wanted to, we could have taken all this stuff out. I promised I would do the other example. Stop that for a second. So what we could say, if we wanted to go 10 units at a time, change this back to height. Okay. So I was going to go until it reaches height. Instead of going 1 at a time, let's say plus equals 10. So it's going to go 0, 10, 20, blah, blah, 30, 40, 50. So we get the exact same result, but here we didn't have to multiply it. And it's kind of up to you which way is going to work best. If you need to multiply by some spacing because of how you want to, when we do the nested for loop project, a little in part 2 of this, it's totally up to you. The main point here, let me get back to the core here, is what does a for loop say and why is it important? Well, you saw that just with one line I was able to cover the whole entire page. That would have been ridiculous if I had to do that copy and pasting from before. And then the second thing is we've assigned the variable, we've checked the condition, and then we've done an iteration. Okay, we go through and we've added 10, we check the condition, we add 10, we check it. We just go back and forth. Okay? And that's what the value is down here. If I said print, let's do that too. If I said print line I, so you can see every one of those little steps. And it just keeps printing because it's doing this every single frame. You can see how many, I just keep scrolling and scrolling, and I just have lines and lines and numbers here. So that's the other important thing to remember is this happens however many times this would be, and we know it's 60 times. 60 times a frame to put down all those lines. Does it 60 times, finishes the frame, puts it down. Next frame, does it 60 times, or however many times we're using the for loop. Okay, that's 11.5 minutes. I think that'll be good. And in round 2 of this little tutorial showcase, we'll get to nested for loops.